I survived 3 Black Friday nightmares, and all 3 started the exact same way, with a door closing behind me. The store, the delivery route, and my own apartment. And in every one of them, someone knew the system better than I did. I was locked inside 3 separate nightmares in one Black Friday season. I was 23, worked nights in retail and delivery shifts, and I nearly did not make it out of any of them alive. The first time happened at the store. The second time happened on a delivery route. The third happened at the apartment where I thought I was safe. Each began with something ordinary and ended with a lesson I keep waking up to. The air in the store smelled like burnt coffee, cheap perfume, and cardstock. The fluorescent lights hummed low, and my badge scraped cold against my shirt. I remember the slick cold of the delivery van handle under my palm, and the metallic taste of adrenaline when a door closed behind me and did not open. What I promise is not just the timeline. I promise the moment when everything I trusted collapsed because someone else knew the system better than I did. I was 23, working double shifts to get out of debt and finish an online degree. I worked nights at a big store in a strip mall and delivered packages for a third-party company on weekends. My manager at the store was Mr. Cole, who had a voice like gravel and a laugh that made everyone relax. My supervisor on deliveries was Miguel, who mapped routes like a chess player. My coworker Jenna covered electronics with me, always humming under her breath. My friend Ethan let me crash on his couch when a delivery ran late. Lisa from security walked the floors in booths and always checked the stockroom doors before she left. Marcus from night stocking had a scuffed jacket and an encyclopedic knowledge of the loading dock. Officer Ramirez would show up later in all 3 stories with tired eyes and notebooks. For months, my routine felt like a suit that fit too large and then suddenly tightened. I learned to read scanners, to trust the app that told me where stock should be, to sign off on deliveries, and smile at unfamiliar faces. That training was precise and efficient, and it failed me because someone exploited a tiny detail in how trust is built. The store was loud the week of Black Friday, and the lights threw long prisms across boxes. I remember the first incident because it started with a whisper from a phone screen. A woman at my register, voice thin and urgent, pointed at her app and said the item was in stock. I told her the standard line and kept scanning. She pressed closer and said, "Please, my daughter is 9 and she has been crying for days." I called to Mr. Cole across the aisle, and he waved us toward the back. The stockroom door closed behind me, and the cool concrete smelled of dust and oil. I scanned, I pulled boxes, I climbed a ladder that creaked and sighed. Then the lights in the corridor went out, and a soft metallic click sealed the main door. I banged. Nothing. My phone said no service. The hum of customers, the music, everything stopped. The first sound I heard was a cart squeal 3 aisles over and a voice that said, "You must be new." He sounded casual and precise, and he knew where the emergency exit was. The man who appeared had a maintenance jacket and a clipboard. He smiled like someone offering directions, and his hands moved like a person who had done this before. He talked slow and kept the conversation small and friendly. We had 9 exchanges before he pulled the cord that made me freeze. I asked who he was. He said he was doing an audit. I asked to see his badge. He said his badge was with his truck. I asked him to leave. He said we could be helpful and that I could help him make his job easier. Each time I tried to explain I was a clerk on a shift, he would nod and redirect. He mentioned names I knew, subtle things like the name of the delivery driver and the last time the scanner went down. He joked about the cameras being new and how sometimes the footage ate itself. He said, "Calm down, kid. This is how we do stock takes." When he offered a temporary solution, I hesitated. Then he moved closer and said quietly, "I do not want trouble for you." The tone changed. The cart squeaked again. I remember my palms sweating, the badge tooth marks against my skin, the air tasting like old glue. The man closed the distance, and the door clicked again, and suddenly I was not an employee with procedures. I was the only person who could not make the system work for me. Backstory first, because you need to know why every choice I made mattered. I grew up in a small town where doors stayed unlocked and the mailman knew your name. My mother worked nights at a diner and taught me how to notice small things, like whether a light burned a different color or whether a key jiggled left on the lock. I moved to the city to take classes and found jobs that paid in hours, not in comfort. In training, I was told the scanner was law, the app was truth, and the badge was identity. I learned to trust the chain from screen to shelf. I learned to say standard phrases like, "We are out of stock, and I will check the back." I learned to call for manager backup and to never leave a customer alone with a package labeled high value. Most of all, I learned to interpret silence as a problem and noise as safety. That education lasted until someone rewired my expectations. The backstory is not an excuse. It is evidence that the tricks worked because people believed in systems. The first major incident ended with a confrontation that felt like chess. The man, who later I learned was named Marcus in a thread on a forum, kept appearing at the edges of my shifts. He had friends who would hold doors and people who used fake work orders to get access to docs. I exchanged words with him 8 to 10 times, each exchange a small push and counterpush. At one point he said, "You do not need to get anyone else. We can sort this now." I said, "I need my manager." He said, "Your manager is busy." I said, "I will leave if you do not." He said, "The door will not let you." I said, "I will call the police." He said, "The police will be delayed." I said, "Your badge." He said, "The badge was in the van." I said, "My name," and he smiled and used it like he owned a page in my life. The air smelled of cardboard and machine oil. The light cutting across his face made his smile look thinner. The tactile memory is my palm pressing the emergency button and the plastic click echoing like a heartbeat. The escalation taught me that calm words can be used like ropes to tie someone down. After that first incident, I thought I understood the pattern. Then the second night came on a delivery route. The van smelled of old fries and the dashboard hummed with tired instrumentation. I had a package flagged as high priority. A woman named Lisa called and confirmed the code. She sounded polite. I pulled into a dark drive, and a man with a tablet and a jacket that looked legit met me at the low light. He showed me a printed receipt and a sticker that matched our label. He seemed courteous and professional. I signed. He left. That was the exchange, simple and clean. Later in the apartment complex, a neighbor named Jenna heard shouting and called down from the stairwell. I thought I was safe until a new voice told me to check with the app, that the delivery was transferred, that the building allowed that. I had 6 exchanges with a man in the stairwell who convinced me to help him get a package that was allegedly left in storage. He used the phrase company protocol 5 times. He used names like Miguel and Mr. Cole to sound rooted. He moved like someone who knew the back ways. The smell of the stairwell was damp and coppery, and my shoes left wet prints. The man who followed me into the storage room closed the door behind us, and his hand brushed the nape of my neck like a test. The tension there was thicker than the air. I felt like my feet were sandbagged. I will pause here and ask you a question and invite you to participate. If you have ever been on a delivery route or opened a door for someone claiming to be from a company, you know the particular cold spike that runs down your spine when a badge does not look right. If this has happened to you, start your comment with the word delivery and tell me which city you were in. If you were in a store and someone asked you to check the back, start your comment with store and say whether you were alone. Sharing the name of the town helps us to map patterns and to see if the same people move across regions. Your story can help someone who is about to say yes to a stranger and pay attention to the small signs. I will read the comments and compile the most common red flags into a future video. By adding your voice, you make a community resource stronger. We will also use the comments to flag whether companies need to change their verification steps. Now I go back to the night when the van left, and I realized I had handed over not just a package, but a trust point. The third incident was the most intimate and the most violating. I had picked up a night shift at a store and returned home to a small apartment that smelled like rice and detergent. I had been asleep for hours when a soft knock at the door came at 1 in the morning. A voice called my name and said it was a maintenance check. I opened a crack and saw a man with a clipboard and a badge. The badge looked like it belonged to a legitimate company, and his grin was easy. He asked for the code because the building had a new entry system. He said, "Our system lost a pulse, so we are doing manual checks." I asked him to call the front desk. He said the front desk was closed and he had been sent by building management. Inside, the hallway smelled like bleach and the light over the elevator flickered. I let him in because my gut caved under his professional calm. After he left, I found my phone missing and a drawer rifled through. I felt the violation like someone had unstitched my skin. The police took a report and said it fit a pattern where people impersonate maintenance to gain access to units. Officer Ramirez told me to always call building management and to verify the supervisor number. That was a response, but it was too late for the sense of safety I had lost. There were 3 tension moments I cannot forget. The first was the moment the stockroom door would not open and a cart squealed like a bone. The second was the closing of the storage room behind me and the hot breath of a stranger close to my ear. The third was the soft knock at the apartment and the smile that made his eyes vanish. Each of those moments compressed time into a sharp stone. In the stockroom, the lights went from humming to hollow, and the air felt colder, like the room itself inhaled. I remember the sound of my own breathing magnified, like a distant engine. The second moment in the stairwell smelled of damp cotton and tin. The man asked one question, and I felt every answer I had learned in training tumble. My hands found the scanner like an anchor. The third moment at my door returned a childhood fear of strangers who wore uniforms. I had a long exchange with the maintenance impersonator where he said, "We are just doing rounds," and I said, "I never gave permission," and he said, "You signed in the app," and I said, "I did not," and he laughed and left. The laugh kept ringing. By the time the police were involved, I had named names and described faces to Officer Ramirez. I had filed a report at the store with Mr. Cole and with corporate. Miguel reviewed route logs and flagged transfers that did not match GPS. Jenna and Ethan found patterns on a community forum where people posted about fake deliveries. Lisa Security added a second lock to the stockroom and taught us a protocol to never let anyone take inventory without a signed work order verified by a central number. Marcus, who I had once seen as a nuisance, turned into an ally who knew which trucks were company and which were not. Officer Ramirez took statements and recommended a forensics team to review camera footage. The footage showed a man entering from an alley, discarding a cap before he opened the stockroom, then returning to the van. Forensics found a partial fingerprint on a carton and a receipt printed with a local store number that belonged to a defunct supplier. I remember the long fluorescent room where Mr. Cole and I watched the grainy clip and did not speak for a long time. He said we were changing policy. I said I wanted to quit. He offered counseling and a paid day off. I left later that week. The consequences were both material and psychological. I lost a camera in the apartment that was worth more than a month of wages. The store lost inventory and had to refund customers. The company updated verification steps for deliveries and required 2 forms of ID plus a time-stamped confirmation from a manager for high-value items. I stopped working nights alone. My hands would shake every time a door clicked. I started carrying a small personal alarm and a padlock for my apartment door. I learned to verify through official channels by typing the company number into my phone rather than trusting a caller ID. I learned to ask for visible supervisor names and to check videos. The pattern the criminals used combined confidence with insider details. They exploited the way people want to help. They used standard phrases that dissolve suspicion. They traded on the assumption that systems protect us. 3 months later, I was back in a store as a day shift temp, still jumpy but functioning. 1 month after the incidents, I had joined a neighborhood watch thread and helped create a checklist for deliveries that included photographing ID badges and matching barcode numbers on site. At 1 month, I also met with a company rep who promised a retraining program. At 3 months, the company installed a verification portal and required random audits. The police made an arrest in another city based on a similar pattern of access, and the suspect had a fake badge kit and a printer. Officer Ramirez told us the arrest was not the end of the story, but it sent a message. At 3 months, I had started seeing a counselor to work through the anxiety of returning to the van in the store. I slept with the alarm on. I had conversations with Jenna and Lisa about responsibility and about how to keep coworkers safe. At 6 months, I was in a different role, day shifts only, and I led a training where we ran mock scenarios for verification. I had built forms that listed name, company ID, a number I could call, and a photo that I could match on the portal. The building management in my complex agreed to require a supervisor callback number for every maintenance request. The thefts still haunted me some nights, but the rituals I adopted became tools rather than bars. I learned to measure trust and to give it slowly. There are practical lessons I still carry and recommend. Always verify through the source by typing in the company number yourself. Insist on seeing 2 forms of ID for deliveries labeled high value, and ask for a manager confirmation with a recorded code. Never open a door fully to someone who cannot provide a verifiable confirmation. For store employees, make the stockroom a 2-step access with a buddy system during high traffic days. For residents, request building management confirmations for any maintenance out of ordinary hours. Keep a small personal alarm on your keyring and know where your nearest exit is. When something feels off, say no and escalate to a supervisor. Trust the checklist more than a smile. If you are a manager, train staff on social engineering tactics and rotate verification procedures so patterns cannot be gamed. I still carry the memory of those nights like a scar that flashes when a door knocks or a delivery pings. I lost material things and gained wariness. I gained alliances with Jenna, Lisa, Miguel, Marcus, and with Officer Ramirez. I lost the illusion that systems always protect us, but I gained an understanding of how to build better ones. If you have a similar story, start your comment with delivery or store and name the city. Share the small details because patterns come from little things, and together we can build a map that protects more people. They took things from me and from the store, but they did not take the changes I helped put into place. The last thing I learned that night was this simple truth. Being cautious is not paranoia, it is practice. Those 3 nights changed everything I thought I knew about safety, work, and trust. But now I want to hear from you. If you've ever worked retail, deliveries, or had someone pretend to be maintenance, start your comment with store or delivery and tell me your city. Your story might help someone avoid the next trap. And if you want more real stories like this, stories that teach you how to stay safe in a world full of strangers, hit subscribe and stay close. Because next week, I'm sharing the one incident I've never talked about publicly.